Hello Legacy students, Marsh here. So today we're going to look at inverse trigonometry, so basically opposite of SOHCAHTOA. Basically this is going to allow us to find an angle in a triangle when we don't know another one. You're going to want a calculator, scientific, just like last time, a pen or a pencil, and then you're going to want the foldable I gave you in class, as well as your notebooks. We're going to take a couple of problems just into the notebook as well. So you should grab out that foldable that we made together that had the inverse sine, inverse cosine. Looks kind of like the trig foldable we made earlier, but this one just has a little bit different to it. Alright, so let's look at inverse sine first. So notice, guys, inverse sine. When we should use the inverse sine is when you have the opposite side of an angle, and then you're also trying to solve for the hypotenuse. So you also have the hypotenuse's measure. So you need sides this time, not angles. So if you notice here on my example, I have an angle that I don't know the value of. It is an x value. So I'm trying to find the angle measure. And I can't find that right now because I know between these two it has to be 90. So I need to use trig, or inverse trig for that matter, to be able to find me this measure. So what I'm going to do, same thing, I'm going to first draw my little guy and label my sides as O, A, and H. That way I can figure out which side's the opposite, which side's the adjacent, which one's the hypotenuse. So I'm going to go across the entire triangle. This one's going to give me my opposite side. Hypotenuse, remember, is across from the right angle, so this has got to be my A. So notice I have numbers with my O and numbers with my H. So I know I have to use sine, because remember, sine was so, right? So I have the sine of my angle, which I don't know. I know that to be x, equals the opposite, 17, over the hypotenuse, 30. Here's where, notice guys, we can't solve for x. I can't just divide by sine. That's not right. I need to actually do what's known as the inverse of sine. So on your calculator, usually on the sine button, you will see yourself find the sine to the -1 button. Usually you have to put maybe like a second key or something, but I'm going to do sine inverse on both sides. So I'm going to sine inverse both sides. Now what's kind of cool is sine inverse and sine cancel each other out. Kind of like if I multiply by 5 and divide by 5, I cancel out. So I'm going to get x equals sine inverse of 17 over 30. So basically what I'm doing is, this is in the calculator. I need to find out what sine inverse of 17 divided by 30 is. So in my calculator, I'm going to set that in and get a value for myself here. So sine inverse of 17 over 30, after I type this into the calculator, I get a value of 34.52 degrees. So that is the angle in question right there. So what now I can do is actually find the other angle as well in this triangle, because all angles add up to 180. Let's talk about inverse cosine now. So basically inverse cosine should be used when you have the adjacent side of an angle and you are trying to solve for it, or you're trying to solve for the angle, and you also have the hypotenuse. So notice guys, I'm trying to find this angle right here. So if I label my sides, this has got to be my opposite, this is my hypotenuse, and this is my adjacent. Notice I have information or numbers with my A and my H. So I know I have to use cosine to find this angle measure, because I have information with A and H. So I know cosine of my angle, which is x, equals my A over my H. Just like last time, notice guys, I can't just divide by cosine. That's not right. So I have to do the inverse cosine on both sides. Basically canceling out my cosine on this left-hand side. I'm left with x. So I need to know what the cosine inverse of 16 over 25 is. I need to find that on my calculator. Normally it's above the cosine, just like where you found sine. And I need cosine inverse of 16 divided by 25. And after I typed that in my calculator here, I got 50.21 degrees for my measurement of my angle. Let's try inverse tangent now, guys. So inverse tangent, when should you use it? It should be used when you have the opposite and adjacent sides, just like when we use tangent when we're trying to find a side. But this one is of an angle. Now notice, guys, there's kind of I'll call it an O. What this means right here, this is known as theta. Normally you'll see that when referring to an angle you do not know the measure of. That is a very common way to say about a theta, but just keep in mind that that might be on a problem or possibly like an ACT or something along those lines. So I'm going to label my sides. I got an O, got my H, here's my A. So notice, guys, we got stuff with O and A, which I know is related to tangent. So I know that the tangent of theta, or you could put X there if you wanted, is my O, 8, over my A, 5. So I need to inverse tangent because I can't get to theta at this current time. So if I inverse tangent, it's going to cancel out my tan, be left with theta. Now I just need to know what's the inverse tangent of 8 over 5. So in my calculator, I'm going to go inverse tangent of 8 divided by 5. And I get a measurement of theta, angle measure, is 57.99 degrees. Now, these are not on your foldable. These are going to go in your notebook. So these ones, just finding an angle. So notice, guys, B is inside of my sine, so I'll have to do inverse sine. So I will get B over here. So inverse sine of 0.4848 is 29.00 if I round. Try to see if you can find these on your calculator, see if you can get the inverse signs. If you're having issues and you're like, I can't find these buttons that you keep talking about, that's okay. Talk to me in class. I will definitely find them for you. So on this second problem here, I have cosine, so I have to use the inverse of cosine. You can't use, if I have cosine, you can't use the inverse of tangent. That doesn't work. They have to be the inverse of one another. So if I have sine, I have to use inverse sine. If I have cosine, I have to use inverse cosine. I have to use the opposite of the same kind. Can't use the different kind of inverse for cosine or any of that nature. So I do inverse cosine on both sides. I get just A on the left. Now I need to know what the inverse cosine of 0.6157 is. And I get a measurement of, rounding, 52.00 degrees. And that's the end of this video. See you later, Sabers.